Hello Bluey fans. Je m'appelle Bondon. Bonjour. Voici mon ami François et Martine. Je suis ici pour un Hamilton project. Laissez le bon temps rouler. Okay. Hello. I think. I think Franco Martin. What I said then wasn't criminally unlike something along the lines of, hello. My name's Brendan. This is my friend Frank and Martin.
This is me. Frank and Martin.
We are here for the Hammer Bun project. Let the good times roll, but laissez le bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll isn't technically French, listeners. It's a Cajun Creole French saying used commonly in New Orleans, the greatest musical city in the world. But I thought I'd throw that one in there because I'm trying to use it more often, but because that's the best place, and I've been there, and Frank's been there.
But they have the French Quarter over
Martin's
there, right?
Pretty good as well.
Thanks, I haven't been there.
He's pretty cool. But this all to say that I wanted to say that opening bit in English as well, half for the benefit of people who don't speak French.
Yes.
And also half for the benefit of people who do speak French and are currently like pouring hot lava in their ears.
What did you just say?
to remove any memory of my horrid pronunciation, because I belong to the category of people who definitely don't speak French.
This episode of the Hammerbomb Project is called Hello Bluey.
This is all nonsense. Because the problem is I am very, very good at going on and on about Bluey episodes without any help. And so I think sometimes it's a good idea if I don't watch the episode beforehand, because then I forget lots of stuff and I only focus on the stuff that's in my memory. But can you tell the listeners, Frank, what episode of Bluey we just, for this episode of our podcast, rewatched?
This episode of Bluey is called Hello Bluey. This episode of Bluey is called Camping.
And I tell you what.
It's called Ugly Crying.
Ugly Crying, which is what we were all doing just then. Because we thought, let's just, confession time, let's just rewatch. Let's just have a little watch back so it's fresh in my memory. There is so much in this episode, and it's all so beautiful. And this is season 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
How dare they? How dare the creators of this show be this good? They've crammed so much in there, and I've just been reminded of it all, and I cannot be held responsible for the rants I go on tonight.
In which language?
Pick. Please pick
German?
English, because that is literally all the French I know, and it was garbage.
Well, you're far better than me. My extent of the French language comes from Flight of the Conchords, and I'm not sure.
Le voyage à la supermarché.
Jacques Cousteau, baguette.
Ananas. À la bibliothèque, à la discothèque.
Yeah, that's about it for me. Marty, how good's your French?
It is not good. It is very not good.
But how is your ability to take the bare bones of an episode of Bluey and present them in an entertaining fashion?
Yeah, let's hope it's all right.
You can only try.
Okay, let's give it a try. There's a first time for everything. So this episode is pretty much a classic retelling of the 1999 romantic drama film Before Sunrise, starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy.
Why the heck not?
Do you guys know that one?
No,
I don't believe I've seen it. My sister probably has.
So while traveling on a train in Europe, Jesse, an American man, meets Celine, a French woman. So it's a bit of a swap in the Bluey episode, but here we are.
Okay.
On his last day in Europe before returning to the US, he decides to spend his remaining hours with her. So it's them wandering around a city and sort of talking about life, the universe, and everything, and becoming good friends. It's really a story about how special people come into your life, but only for a certain amount of time. And when one of you is French.
I'm gone again.
That's kind of... stop, we're not there yet.
Can't do it.
No. So really, this episode is about the girls going camping, but it very quickly becomes about Bluey making friends with a French dog, Jean-Luc, and they play some games together, but ultimately he kind of disappears without Bluey realizing he was saying goodbye.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's the
coming
bit.
to terms with the idea that, sometimes special people are in our lives, but, for a certain period of time, you meet fun people and then you don't get to spend forever with them sometimes.
And not to man's best friend explained so early, especially seeing as I don't have all the evidence to go on with this, to be sure, but I have a theory that Jean-Luc is not actually French per se, but French-Canadian.
Oh.
Okay.
And can you guys tell me why I might think that?
I don't
Is it
know, but I
something
feel
about
we're
what they're
about to be
eating?
explained.
Oh, Marty's on it.
What'd you say?
Is it something they're eating at dinner time?
Yeah.
I
don't know if it's dinner
I don't know
I
what they
can't
were
remember.
eating, but I know there was
know-
a shot of them eating something.
Yeah, yep. And on the table is a little bottle of maple syrup. It's got a
Dude,
Canadian. Yeah.
That's a great pull.
Yeah. So that's my theory. That's my working theory that
bad.
Jean-Luc comes from a French-Canadian family.
There you go.
Well, I know a couple of French Canadians. I might sort of ask, hey, send them the audio.
Yeah, is
and
it like a dialect?
Is
that's
it? Can you
common
pick
to-
that between that and a pure blood French person?
Mm.
Now, speaking of the whole language thing, when this episode of Bluey airs in France, do you know what happens?
No.
He speaks English.
What? Is that true?
Yeah, they flip it.
Holy moly! That's awesome.
Because obviously, show like Bluey gets sort of
Translated,
redubbed
dubbed,
for all the
yeah.
local
Yeah.
dialects, and so Jean-Luc speaks English in this episode when it airs in France.
In France, he's from the English-speaking part of Canada.
The theory holds up.
Yeah, excellent. That's probably why they did it.
I don't know about the maple syrup bit, but
Yeah, they still eat maple syrup in non-French-speaking parts of Canada. That doesn't discriminate.
I just love. Well, that just reminds me, Frank, of when they, they always redub the silly characters in. I forget what it is. It's like some
Yeah,
comedies
The
or something.
Simpsons.
Like in the Danish episode he's Dutch, and in the Dutch episode, in the Dutch version he's
yes.
Finnish or something like that. So they just share it all around, and everybody gets to be a
I
dummy.
think I heard in the Spanish language version of The Simpsons, Homer is voiced
That's
by
it.
someone from Mexico.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if that holds up, politically correctly these days,
yeah.
but I think at the the Mexican dialect that their accent was considered one of like humor and
that's it.
slapstick nature, I guess.
It's like
I
the
don't know.
Swedish chef. I think it's like Danish in Sweden, something like
Yeah.
that. All those
Oh, there you
classic
go.
ones. Yeah.
So before we get to the emotionally destructive part of this episode, which is pretty much the last 9/10 of it, I want to go back to the start. We're in the RV or the caravan,
Yep.
and there's a bit of drama going on. Kids not sharing. I'm sure there's so many people who have gone on camping trips with the family, with the extended family.
Yeah.
And you can relate to that. What is it? An argument over a cup or something?
It's such a Trixie and Stripe caravan to have.
Yep.
And it's such a muffin thing to do to like, because
My
she's
caravan.
not, she's a little younger, and she's not, and of course
We're still talking season 1 muffin, mind you.
yeah,
So-
season 1 muffin.
Yeah.
But Bingo and Bluey are always playing together. Socks is probably still a little bit too young to play, and so Muffin hasn't got her head around cooperative
How to
play
play fair,
yet,
yeah.
and so she just defaults to going, "No, that's mine." That's mine. And I love when Bingo. There's so much going on.
Yeah.
When Bingo walks into frame playing like
The
what is-
chef.
She's got a-
the
cook.
chef, and it's like your
Cook, yeah.
pancakes are ready or whatever's ready. I can't remember the food that she's cooking, but she comes in and she's holding the fry pan, but she's holding it with both hands.
Yeah.
'cause
It's
she's
so
got the
heavy for a
handle.
little kid.
She's only tiny, and she's literally got like she wants to pretend to be cooking
But
to have a fry
yeah.
pan, but she literally needs to hold it from both sides. It's so good. It's all mine.
And that spoke to me at the moment because Naomi's just reached the stage where everything is hers.
Right.
Gotcha.
Which is interesting sort of discussion. Oh, yeah, okay, it's your. Yeah, okay, fine. That's yours, and that's. It was funny. It was funny at the very first when it was mine's. That's mine's.
Mine's.
I'm like, it's mine's. Okay.
Sure.
It's
Very good.
it probably depends on what it is, whether it's funny or not. Like mine's, well, that's, your doll. Yeah. Well, oh, that's your teddy bear. Yeah. No, that's my laptop. It's definitely not.
it's
Please
definitely
don't claim
mine.
that as mine's.
Actually,
Definitely
no, that
mine's.
makes me think of another one today because Naomi, she's getting bigger. I think she's having a growth spurt. So I was picking her up today. I'm like, you are getting so heavy. You are so heavy. And she's like, Daddy getting heavy. And I'm like,
Wow.
that hurts a bit.
So we've talked a little bit about languages. There's a third language in this episode.
Do
That's it. That's exactly right.
we know why he's doing
Yeah.
that?
There's no explanation for it. That I know I'm aware
he's
of.
just he's totally aware. And I don't care what the explanation is. They're all good. Like he could be totally in on what's going on and he's playing the game and he wants to be a creature that they can try and hunt.
and stuff,
And that wouldn't surprise me. Or it could be just from the kid's perspective. They want him to be the part of the wild pig. So he's actually saying stuff or not saying anything at all. And that's just what they're hearing in their
perception
imagination
of
head.
it.
No,
Yeah.
I don't care. It's all brilliant.
I just love it when he rolls over at night time when they're trying to get up to go for the bush
Yeah.
swing. And he's just
Yeah.
because they don't play it up. I was wondering if it was meant to be he's just like really tired because he's camping with his whole family
Yeah.
and that's all he can
Yeah.
sort of manage.
Can you imagine the script that poor Dave McCormack would have got for that? He's looking at his lines going,
Grunts.
is that it? Like,
It was probably, I don't even have to get up. They could just record me sleeping.
we've talked a couple of times on this show about the establishing shots or those shots that don't really have a place in the story other than that they set the scene really well. Dandelions. Like, are they dandelions? Correct me if I'm wrong. Or is it some sort of wild flower?
Yeah.
And there's a couple, they appear a couple of times.
Scene breaker type shots.
Yeah, and it's the sort of thing you go, it's not a flower that you'd see in a garden bed. It's just something you'd find out wherever they're parked.
Yeah.
It is another beautiful, like, calm type episode in connection with nature, which we've seen like a few of, and it's like I can't remember whether it was in our discussion. Sorry, I'm mentioning it every episode now, but when we chatted to Joe Brum about, I think he said that
that
this
time we
comes
chatted
from
to Joe Brum.
Joe Brum. We talked to Joe Brum.
That's right. That's right. I had totally forgotten about the time we spoke to the creator of the best show ever, Joe Brum.
Yeah, that time.
I can't remember. Was this from our conversation?
This is now a thing,
or
you know that,
was
right?
it from? Because I listened to a bunch of other interviews, but he was talking about how this episode came from a real thing that happened with his family of just, they got up one morning and the other family they were playing with, like spending time with had disappeared or something like that. So, but I feel like as well, it's the interacting with nature. He was talking about in, what's it called? The Rain episode. Is it just called
Rain?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And talking about how he used to play in the gutter, or it was going to be an episode about the gutter, and you can whack me with a newspaper, Burt Creek, and things like that. So this very sort of natural based childhood of mucking around in the water and playing around in the mud and stuff like that. That seems to come through. That theme comes through in this one pretty strong again. Like making huts out of sticks and leaves and
cave
like
paintings, with clay on rocks and stuff.
With the mud.
Yeah. And I'm literally going camping this weekend with my brother-in-law Nick, and I think my brother-in-law Mark might be coming along. So there will be like cousins there, like and around that age, doing all those things and playing together. So this is going to ring true for me again.
Wow.
This weekend.
You know what you got to do? You got to get a little seed. You got to plant the seed and then come back to that camping spot in 15 years.
What are we guessing? That was my question. Is we're getting all the way to the end, but how much older is she? So
I think
she's about, let's say 6.
Yeah.
I'm guessing she's about 16. So I'm guessing it's about 10 years.
About 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah. 10, 15. Yeah. Oh man, it's just so nice. Their relationship. Have I told the story about when I was in Germany on this podcast before? This is a bit of a side thing, but I'll try and make it as quick as I can. But it's a story about language barriers and how when you overcome language barriers, it's really special. Like it was World Youth Day 2005. Yeah, and we were with our youth group and we went to Germany. And there was, we got billeted out into this town, this lovely little town called Michelsrombach. And me and remember Kyle Hode?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, me and my mate Carl, we stayed with a lot of, like, everyone stayed with members of the community. It was really lovely because we got to know this community. And we stayed with the police chief of the area. And he was this lovely man named Karl-Heinz Becker. It was Karl-Heinz Gelinda Becker. So shout out to the Beckers. And in Mikkelsrombach.
We know you're listening.
If you're listening. Yeah. And how good's Bluey? And German dub. But they didn't speak a word of English. And we didn't speak a word of German. But of course, being Germany and Schützenfest, and they love their guns. Their shooting is their national sport. And he was showing us his gun safe and all these guns. We were like, oh, you know, this is really interesting. And I thought, oh, I'll try and tell this story about my dad. My dad's gonna kill me. But I said to Karl-Heinz, I said, and I had a couple of words that I knew from primary school. I'm like, okay, meine Vater. And he's like, yeah. And I said, and I was making the actions like when he was younger, like my height. Yeah. And Karl-Heinz is like, yeah. And I said, he had, and he had like a 303 rifle. And I said, he had, a 303, and he goes, yeah. And like rolls his eyes, he goes, yeah, of course he hit. And I said, and I did like driving, like action driving.
Yep.
And he's like, yeah, and he was driving, and I made the gun was in the back seat, and I made the action of going over a bump.
Yep.
And he goes, oh, nine. and I just went, and then in a big, and I made this action of like a big hole, and he's like, oh, nine. And we were laughing, and it was just like, we couldn't speak the same language. And
but he understood your story.
When there's that constraint in life, it's one of those times where constraints can make things beautiful because you get across only the stuff that really matters.
Yep.
And you have to work for that connection. So when the connection is made, like the connection between Jean-Luc and Bluey, it's really special.
It's powerful, yeah.
And so I love that the Bluey goes over and wakes him up every day. On the third day, I think it is, they hold hands.
Yeah.
And they're forming this friendship, and they can't speak each other. It's so freaking nice, guys.
I sometimes talk about, like, I watched the episode once and I don't really have any notes, and I'm like, oh, maybe, there's something, and then I watch it again and I take loads of notes. This time I just didn't even take notes on the second time around, because I think it's such a simple and elegant story, so well told. I think there's other episodes we talk about, there's fun little tidbits and little jokes and, other sort of eddies that kind of get pulled off. But this one's just like a strong central idea. It just carries you through. Yeah. Yeah, so nice. You just get pulled along for this traveling adventure down the stream sort of thing.
100%. Camping things, just because if I can't forget to get some of the camping points in there, because, I don't presume to go camping as much as I would like, or as much as lots of people do, but I do own a troop carrier, and I try and get out there as much as I can. And I've been to many a Flinders trip. If you're in SA, you know what I mean. Flinders, one of the most beautiful camping areas in the freaking world. And this just all the stuff in here about the feeling of camping, like when Chili walks past, just like she's holding some spatula thing and a loaf of bread, like it's there's something so camping about that. Yep. And just the night lights and the thing, and the bushwee and the bushwee, and just the freedom of the whole thing. But if I can, I'll share this one other piece of philosophy, and then I'll actually let other people talk. But that moment where they're out for the bushwee, and you mentioned it before, Marty, Chili just gives her piece of stone cold wisdom, and it's just perfect wisdom, like beyond anybody's years. Then the light turns off and you see the stars, and that really is a camping moment when you're out there, and especially like not to downplay anything else, but the Flinders is really one of the best places in the world to stargaze, at least in the southern hemisphere, I would wager. But there is that moment when you turn off all other lights, and I tried to do it last time. I was camping with our mutual friends Tom and Kristen, and we were in Wilpena Pound, and we'd gone down like a Bracknell Gorge. We closed our eyes for like 5 minutes, Oh no, we tried to close our eyes for like a minute or 3 and counted it, and then open your eyes and look up, and it was a clear night and the moon had gone to bed.
Yep.
And there's nothing like it. And I just find camping, and this really captures the spirit of, like, when she says the world is a beautiful place.
It's a magical
It really
place.
is. It's a magical place. Yes, sorry. Thank you. Thank you for man's best friend splaining. I appreciate it. I need to be corrected. I'm a pedant for that stuff. But got to get it right. Got to respect the show. Got to respect the writers. But when you do look up at the stars, especially when the moon is there and when the moon's sort of like in its crescent phase, but it's still illuminated enough for you to see the whole moon, and you can, for a moment, picture it as not just this unexplainable disc, but like a ball, like a real celestial body out there. And all of a sudden you just feel so small. Yeah. But even though you feel small, to my mind, I just feel a part of something so much bigger. Yeah. And it's really connected. Yeah. I feel so like sometimes we need to be humbled like that. I mean, I don't want to get all super philosophical, but when things get too much and you do go camping, the world is a magical place. And when you feel like, those are the times when I feel smaller. And when I feel smaller, I feel more a part of it. Like, it's not all about me. I'm a part of this magical thing. And this episode just does it to me every time. And I know that the people who wrote and animated this episode just feel that way about it. And that's a really comforting thing.
And I think for me as well, that moment, it's not, the world is a magical place and you do feel small, humbled, and part of it. And it also, to me, gets the things a time scale. Like, it puts things in perspective in terms of time scale. Like,
yes, Martin.
Moments, it's a moment in time, but just a couple of blinks later, it's going to be 10 years later. And you might see this
buddy.
person again. So I find that whenever I'm looking at the ocean as well, it's just this very eternal, continuous thing that doesn't really be impacted by all our strange and weird things that we do throughout our lives. It's sort of always going same, looking up at the sky. So yeah, that whole thing of considering things in a larger time scale, I think really comes through in that moment. That and Bingo's face for the entirety of the bushweed.
her sleepy pea face.
Sleepy pea face is fantastic. I think that must be an example of, like, Joe was talking about how, how do you get exposition out? You have Bingo doing something funny. I think that's a fantastic example of that, because the face and the sleepy eyes as well. So there's this, beautiful philosophical moment going on for anybody who's engaged with that, and everybody else is just watching the sleepy pea face.
This is a really long week, Bingo. We've done that one. We're allowed to self-reference our own episodes.
Oh man, well, yeah. There should be something for when someone erroneously hits someone with a rolled up magazine, and then you should you can get back at me for
and you rip it off.
Just an electric shock,
because we've already
cattle prod.
Yikes.
This is the first time we get a flash forward, isn't it? Because it's something that the Bluey,
think so.
Bluey doesn't.
Certainly of the episodes we've covered, I believe. But
because there is another flash forward that is a punch in the emotional guts for the ages.
That one's worse.
But is that chronologically before or after?
It's a good question. Bluey fans out there who know the episode order far better than us, write to us, tell us, let us know.
We promise it's not our fault. It's just because we get them randomly on ABC iView. Now I'm just blaming ABC iView, and I love you, ABC.
No, we're just not organised. We just go and throw a dart at a board. Okay, we'll do that.
Pretty good with the with knowing the way they come chronologically, but I do throw you under the bus.
Thanks, man.
Put you on the spot.
It is a really interesting little mechanic that's not used often, though. And I'm going to bring it back to my Japanese garden theory.
Oh, please do.
Here we go.
I use that all the time, by the way. That you fill in the gaps
idea
by
that
yourself.
if you've got, the circle of what happens in the show is of a certain diameter, but then you're just creating this point that's way, way out there. And now we can fill in all the space. Like, what are all the things that are going to happen between then and now? So there's just so much additional. I think that's why it kind of hits the brain so hard as well. All of a sudden you're filling in all these stories, all the things that get them to that point, and you know that there's so much more background.
I think it goes back also to what you're saying, Marty, about timescale, because timescale, what is it about it that lends such weight to a story? Like if you've got something that happens over time, or you like flashbacks in movies, and also like just antiques. And I think maybe that's why I like Indiana Jones, because the things he seeks are so ancient. There's something so weighty to the storytelling. It lends such importance because something has been around for so long, I guess. There's a better way to say that, but I can't find it.
There's so many stories packed into it, like folded infinitely on top of one another that could you know, be unpacked, and it's sort of contained within that very small thing.
Hey, can I throw a for real life at you?
I'd be upset if you didn't.
Yeah, I was wondering if there would be.
This is not to do with camping. I'm a bit like Brendan. I've been camping. I've been to the Grampians. That's one of my favorite
I love
spots.
the Grampians.
Grampians is a wonderful spot. But part of the Bluey fandom view the very famous ending of this episode as there's this hint, and it is super subtle, but this hint of romance. Right, between Jean-Luc and Bluey, and the show doesn't touch on it, so this is not anything to do with that. But in my mind, you know, it's that thing of these special people come into your lives. Now, for me, this harkens all the way back to, gosh,
you might have told me this story.
I'm not sure if I have, because I don't even recall telling my wife this story. But this harkens all the way back to this is nothing bad. It's fine, people.
Ali, keep listening. It's okay.
You don't have to put headphones on. Trust me. Harkens back. I'm pretty sure it was year 4. So that makes me 8 years old.
Something like that.
Yeah. And anyway, I was, at the school I was at, and then as occasionally happens, you get people who join the school year sort of partway through, like halfway through the year. And this new girl walks into the class, and little 8-year-old me didn't quite know what was happening at the time. Anyway, we became really good friends. It turns out her dad was also in the armed forces, which explained why they came in partway through. My dad was in the Air Force previously, so they had a bit of a connection. She also had a younger sister that was around the same age as my sister. So the two families actually got on really well. And then they moved away, essentially, because Dad got redeployed somewhere else. And I would still to this day can picture poor little heartbroken me sitting in the back seat of the car, realizing that this person that, and I'm not going to use the word love because I was 8 years old, but not trying to understand why this was so difficult. And then, having this conversation with my dad, years later, because it's sort of still stuck with me. And he basically said Chili's advice, where he's like, sometimes, special people come into your lives for a bit and then they're gone. And I've never seen her again. Her last name was Johnson, so to try and look her up is even in this digitally connected world we live in is ridiculous.
Well, it's funny you should say that, Frank, because I brought someone along that just open the door. She's here tonight, ladies and every time I was trying to do the "This Is Your Life" music. Every time I try to do game show music, it always ends up being Price is Right.
I was going to say, you just open the door and Ali's standing there giving Frank an eye.
When Bluey says, "Now we've got to catch that wild pig today," and she does that little arm movement where she punches her, like she's so serious about it. A lot of that animation is excellent, and the music as well. Yeah, like we were talking about it when we were watching it. When they get the plan together and they've drawn it. My dad showed me how to do this, and they do the little ochre drawing on the rock. They turn to each other like as they hear the wild pig. They turn to each other and their eyes narrow, and then there's that like panpipes come in, like almost like a war call. It's brilliant.
This is one that features on the Bluey album that you can listen to on your iTunes, Spotify.
It's so beautiful. The main theme, yes.
Yeah, we've got to stop, otherwise we're going to reach copyright. Oh man, because it sounded so good.
So
and the birds also, that when the tree grows up and you get that last shot of a fully grown tree and the birds flying out. For anyone who was fortunate enough to see the Bluey stage show, like I did, a real fan.
Jelly.
Those birds in the sort of like 10 minutes before the show actually starts, to entertain what is obviously usually a very young crowd. They have these birds because the whole thing's done with puppets, obviously, these really long black sticks that have these birds on the end, sort of the floppy wings, so they get as they're moving up and down on these large flexible poles, and you've got each puppeteer controlling about 3 or 4 of these birds, so they're able to swoop them from side to side and up and down, and it took me back to that, and I'm just like, what a wonderful way to establish nature in an episode like this. It's just so good.
Frank, you told your story then, and we moved on from pretty fast.
Yeah. Brendan just undercut the whole thing. Talk about an emotional gut punch, followed by a slap in the face.
I'm so sorry. It's just the mood took me.
But I feel like that's one of the beautiful things about this episode is I'm sure it's relatable for so many different people.
Yep.
It's even a story that kind of gets, sorry, you can hit me with a newspaper, but it gets told in fairy tale. It's similar. Like there's a special summertime where you go somewhere where you're not usually. You meet people, and then there's a time at which the holiday ends, and so it's such a common thing. I'm sure it resonates with so many people. I can't think of a particular example for myself, but I just having those special summers.
Yeah, and they keep some of the magic in fairy tale with that as well, because they never spell out that it was chilly 100%. So that's kind of like, could it be? Have they met again? It was that, but that's roll-up newspaper territory. So, well. What have we learned? We've learned that Brendan shouldn't watch the episode immediately before recording because then he will not shut up.
In either language.
In any language. A valuable lesson to be learned. But speaking of lessons and life lessons and lime lessons and life lemons, was that this episode or last episode that you quoted all that, Marty?
I think it's a regular thing.
Is it a regular thing now? I'm down with that. Yeah. What is the actual quote? It's lime lesson, isn't it?
It's life lemons, I thought.
I think they say, I don't want a valuable lime lesson.
Oh, it might be lime lesson.
But I like the putting lemon in for lesson as well. Life lemons.
Just change it up every time.
When lime gives you lemons.
What are you trying to say here?
Plant them and make a nice tree.
Yes. That's what I was trying to say. But I let Marty say it because I would never have got there. Evidenced by how long it took me to get anywhere this episode. And how long it will take me to get anywhere next episode. I bet you're excited, listeners. Please stick around. Frank, you're a good man.
I know.
And Marty, you are also a good man.
Oh,
I couldn't think of another compliment to pay you, so he's the same one. Is that okay?
Well, thanks.
I'll pay you, and I'll pay you all a compliment, listeners. You're great. But in all seriousness, we should all go camping soon. They've got to have camping stuff at Hammer Barn.
Absolutely.
They've got everything at Hammer Barn.
It's all there.
Folks, run to Hammer Barn, grab all your camping gear, and meet me and Marty and Frank at campsite 300.
Left of the fruit tree.
And if you see a frying pan, it's mine.
We know it's yours, Martin. We're only borrowing it.
Created and produced by Frank, Brendan and Marty. You can follow the Hammerbarn Project on facebook.com/HammerbarnProj, at HammerbarnProj on Twitter, or Hammerbarn_project on Instagram. Theme featuring Nibblings, Kaylee, Jade, Ashley and Ree, and PA announcements by brother-in-law, me, Josh. Thanks for listening, and remember to get down to Hammerbarn for cheap shovels.
Brendan, you haven't had a bath in 2 days.
But I like being stinky.